Joining us now with his insight, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. There's a lot to absorb here, but as a historian, I've got to ask you to look at this from the Watergate perspective. You know, we found our 18 and a half minute gap, apparently, and it's a 5-month gap of text messages.
Look, this whole thing, you couldn't write a novel like this because it wouldn't be believable. If you believe that the text they were sending each other was accurate and candid, there's a smoking gun, first of all, that they believe that the Attorney General knew that Clinton would not be charged with anything before she was interviewed, which may explain why the interview was not under oath, because the whole thing was a charade. It also suggests to you that when the Attorney General met with President Clinton on that airplane in Arizona, they both probably already knew that they were going through a dance, but nothing was going to come of it. You now have, this idea of 4.5 months, part of what I don't understand is Hillary Clinton's people had to take a hammer and bleach in order to try to make sure they couldn't find information. Surely somewhere, either the NSA or the FBI or somebody is going to be able to track down all of these text messages. It is almost beyond belief that the key players happen to lose 4.5 months of text messages.
Oh, wait a minute, but it happened with Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner's was gone for 2 years, and then we found them. Hillary Clinton deleted 33,000 subpoenaed emails, and then she acid washed the hard drives with bleach pit, and then she had one of her employees smashing any mobile devices with hammers. Debbie Wasserman Schultz's IT guy, well, he had broken, smashed hard drives in his garage, government hard drives. It seems like this is now the go-to option. Just destroy everything.
Well, and what that, as I've said before, talking with you both on radio and TV, this is clearly, by any plausible standard, the most corrupt senior Justice Department and senior FBI we have ever seen in American history. And it's frightening. Here you had the people who were supposed to enforce the law, who are engaged in a conspiracy to undermine the new president, to protect the Democratic nominee. It seems to me they're not going to possibly avoid having an independent counsel go into this whole thing, and that you're going to have Comey at risk. You're going to have, remember, the deputy who they're referring to, whose office they were meeting in, his wife had been a candidate for the state senate, and I believe got $900,000 in donations from the Democrats. So you have a whole issue there of whether he should have, at a minimum, recused himself from anything involved in this, because there's patent obvious bias involved. Every time you turn around in this case, something new comes out, and it's ironically, after all their attacks on Clinton, on Trump, all of the real evidence is coming out about the Democrats. And you'll notice one of the texts that was not lost was the one where Strzok says, I really don't want to do the Mueller thing because I know as the guy who's been the deputy.
Yeah, there's nothing happened.
There's nothing there.
There's no there. Well, what about the fact that, what do you make of this secret society that they're discussing here, and they're discussing, Strzok and Page, how to remove text messages before the text messages went missing? In other words, they have a text out there about eliminating the text. That sounds like obstruction to me.
Well, certainly. And what you have to ask yourself is whether or not there was ever a true secret society. Who did they think was in the secret society? Did they think that the deputy head of the FBI was? It was his office they were talking in. Did they think Comey was? He's the guy who basically exonerates Hillary Clinton and refuses to ask her questions under oath. Just go down the list. And you have to say to yourself that there is more than enough here already to justify a full-blown investigation and to justify bringing in an independent counsel.
Here's what I need to ask you. This is a very important question. Now, you're right, you couldn't write this in a novel. But you have Hillary Clinton. We now know, Donna Brazile told us, she rigged the primary election. Bernie Sanders supporters had no shot. It was rigged from the get-go. Then you've got now evidence that, in fact, Comey and Strzok and it looks like Loretta Lynch is in the loop somehow, and I've got to believe Andrew McCabe, that the fix is in on the email server investigation by them. And it's profound because they're writing the exoneration before the investigation, which, you know, they didn't even interview Hillary till July 4th. They're doing this in May. And they even take away the legal standard gross negligence out of it. They take that foreign entities actually hacked into Hillary's email server. Then you've got Hillary and her campaign paying $12 million, funneling it through a lawyer. She's running the DNC, according to Donna Brazile. That money's funneled through the same lawyer to produce a dossier with Russian propaganda and lies so that they can kind of rig the general election. Now, then that phony dossier is used to get a FISA warrant to spy on an opposition candidate, presidential candidate, in an election year. And then they spy on the candidate, and then they spy on a president-elect and his team. All of which is illegal, and especially fundamentally, she was guilty as hell in terms of mishandling classified top-secret special access program information and destroying such. All of that, had she not gotten the pass from Comey and company, she wouldn't have been the nominee, and it would have put the party in chaos. So they made a decision to put her above the law. I mean, you can't write that, and what I'm saying is indisputable at this point.
Well, look, I think you're exactly right. I think what you had here is a decision, and this goes back to the entire corruption of the Clinton system, the corruption of the foundation, the sheer scale of money that these people were engaged in, the degree to which they were willing to do things. They basically believed that there was no law as far as Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were concerned, and they had an entire network of people who came to share the same belief. And I mean, that's the conclusion I reached, is that this was a degree of absolute not even thinking about the law. They thought that their job was to run America, and if that meant that they had to break the law and they had to try to destroy Trump and they had to do a variety of other things, they were going to do it. And I also agree with you. I think the person in some ways who has the greatest grievance here has to be Bernie Sanders, because it is so clear.
He actually accepted it and went along with it. All right, well, stay right there. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, his best-selling book, Vengeance. All right, as we continue, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, as we now continue our investigation into what has now become a colossal mess. The danger here, I want you to put your historian hat on. Watergate was a third-rate break-in to get opposition information, steal information in the course of a presidential campaign, and then it was about a cover-up. Now we're talking about weaponizing the powerful tools of intelligence and lying in the process, using bought and paid for Russian lies to go after a presidential candidate, influence the electorate, and basically try and steal an election with that phony information, and in the process have the government do the spying and the leaking and be involved in all of this. How much worse on a scale compared to Watergate is this?
Well, they're not at all comparable. I mean, Watergate was in some ways part of the old order in which Nixon felt like he was constrained by the law. And ultimately, the people around him were constrained by the law. These are people who are blatantly rigging the game at every level, and who, I think, had Clinton won, we would have learned nothing of this scandal. And it should scare people. I mean, you're talking here about elements of the Justice Department, elements of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, deciding that they would break the law in order to stop the American people's choice from becoming president. Now, think about the meaning of that. This is totally different, I think, than the Watergate problem. This is really a very profound threat, because if we don't get to the bottom of this, and if we don't make it clear that you simply can't do things like this, we run the risk of eventually, over time, people deciding that they're just going to randomly enforce the laws they care about, and will begin to resemble one of those third world dictatorships where the power of the state props up the rich and the powerful and crushes dissent, and Venezuela being the current very painful example. And I think that this is truly, I know of no occasion in American history. In fact, I'll challenge our audience to email you if they come up with one. I know of no occasion in American history where we have seen the power of the government and the power of the police forces used
then let me ask
the way
this.
they have been used here.
This is the biggest political scandal in my lifetime, and maybe even when all is said and done in the history of the country. You've had the left-wing media in this country fixated on Trump-Russia collusion. They have ignored the biggest story of their lives. They are complicit in a lot of ways, because you would think that there are some journalists now looking at all this saying, oh, my God, what has happened? Where are they in this moment when you would think their better selves are called to greatness? Sir, thank you. We'll see you on TV, I think tonight. Thank you, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich.